Welcome to the FENS Forum 2024 podcast. I'm Malcolm Love, and it's my pleasure to present to you a taster of the forum for each day. And this is Wednesday, day 2 of the forum, the 26th of June. The brain debate is a big event here, of course, and yesterday we heard from Professor Emily Cross. Today we get to meet another participant, Professor Nandini Chatterjee Singh. She's responsible for the Rethinking Learning project at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Her speciality is translating neuroscience to the classroom, and to begin with, I asked her all about that.
One of the most exciting things to have happened to humankind has been able to understand how the brain works. And because of the advances in technology and because of techniques like functional magnetic resonance imaging, something called FNIRS, which is far near infrared spectroscopy, you can actually peer into the brain. Okay, and that has revealed a number of aspects about learning, which I think are very beneficial for a number of aspects, and particularly for education. And if I may give a simple example, often my favorite one, and which is how I started out, is the fact that many of us don't even realize that a process which we take for granted, something like reading, is actually quite complicated. And there are different aspects of reading that the brain has to learn to do, which make it possible for us to read. For instance, there is no single region in the brain meant for reading, but it's a number of areas that come together and work in concert to be able to produce a reading circuit. And it is because of a superpower which human beings have called neuroplasticity, that by using this again and again, you actually form a pathway. So you almost like form a Google map within your brain, which allows you to now read efficiently. But imagine if there are children who are not able to read very efficiently. It is important to be able to identify which of those nodes in that reading pathway might be impacted, which can be addressed so that the child is able to learn to read. And I think that's one area where neuroscience has made tremendous contributions.
Thinking about reading, you're having to recognize symbols, understand the meaning of those symbols,
Map them to letters.
Yes, and the concept of neuroplasticity, it seems, is very key to what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. So neuroplasticity is, I think, the reason why it's so popular and it's so important is, for many years we believed the brain cannot be changed. Okay, but now we know that the brain is malleable. In fact, it's malleable throughout life. But it's particularly malleable when you are young. So if one is able to build the right kind of pathways, habits in childhood, I think we can empower young people to not only learn how to do a number of things in life well, but also to be able to learn how to keep themselves well. And a lot of my work now at MGIP is focused on trying to train young children as well as teachers to recognize the fact that well-being is actually a skill. And just like you learn to do a number of other things like, maybe juggling balls or learning a new language, if you learn some of the right practices, which we call procedural learning, you will actually be able to navigate life much better. And over the years, I've come to realize that this is probably one of the earliest skills we should teach young people. And so a lot of my work now is focused on trying to bring this learning to the classroom, to teachers, to enable them to learn the practices that will help young people lead happier, healthier lives.
Of course, I especially wanted to talk to Nandini about her role in this year's brain debate and what she thinks about the subject of neuroscience and artificial intelligence.
one of the most exciting things to have happened to humankind has been able to understand how the brain works. And because of the advances in technology and because of techniques like functional magnetic resonance imaging, something called FNIRS, which is far near infrared spectroscopy, you can actually peer into the brain. Okay, and that has revealed a number of aspects about learning, which I think are very beneficial for a number of aspects, and particularly for education. And if I may give a simple example, often my favorite one, and which is how I started out, is the fact that many of us don't even realize that a process which we take for granted, something like reading, is actually quite complicated. And there are different aspects of reading that the brain has to learn to do, which make it possible for us to read. For instance, there is no single region in the brain meant for reading, but it's a number of areas that come together and work in concert to be able to produce a reading circuit. And it is because of a superpower which human beings have called neuroplasticity, that by using this again and again, you actually form a pathway. So you almost like form a Google map within your brain, which allows you to now read efficiently. But imagine if there are children who are not able to read very efficiently. It is important to be able to identify which of those nodes in that reading pathway might be impacted, which can be addressed so that the child is able to learn to read. And I think that's one area where neuroscience has made tremendous contributions.
Thinking about reading, you're having to recognize symbols, understand the meaning of those symbols,
Map them to letters.
Yes, and the concept of neuroplasticity, it seems, is very key to what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. So neuroplasticity is, I think, the reason why it's so popular and it's so important is, for many years we believed the brain cannot be changed. Okay, but now we know that the brain is malleable. In fact, it's malleable throughout life, but it's particularly malleable when you are young. So if one is able to build the right kind of pathways, habits in childhood, I think we can empower young people to not only learn how to do a number of things in life well, but also to be able to learn how to keep themselves well. And a lot of my work now at MGIP is focused on trying to train young children as well as teachers to recognize the fact that well-being is actually a skill. And just like you learn to do a number of other things, like, maybe juggling balls or learning a new language, if you learn some of the right practices, which we call procedural learning, you will actually be able to navigate life much better. And over the years, I've come to realize that this is probably one of the earliest skills we should teach young people. And so a lot of my work now is focused on trying to bring this learning to the classroom, to teachers, to enable them to learn the practices that will help young people lead happier, healthier lives. I think one question that I want to particularly address is the scientific and ethical challenges that we face, either when we're looking at brain data or when we are looking at AI, okay? And if there are some common ethical principles that we can use from one into another to be able to make sure that the science that we decide to undertake to understand human behavior better actually is protected by ethics. So a lot of data that we gather from children, in my case, particularly as part of my research, and as part of learning in AI, is being mined by many of us to be able to understand either learner analytics or learner behavior. Yet we very rarely spend enough time trying to inform the learner who is learning online that his or her data is going to be used to understand brain development or learning, and whether they would willingly share that data, because that data is personal. And so one aspect is to be able to make that clear out there that your data can be used for research. The second aspect is, can we learn from methods that are being used in neuroscience or from AI? So use modeling methods from one area into another. A third aspect, which I think is going to be very interesting to use, is how can neuroscientists begin to use findings from AI responsibly? Okay. So when we collect a lot of neuroscience data, one of the things that we would love to do is to run models to try and understand what are the patterns telling us. That's a lot like what even AI is trying to do. So can some of those algorithms across the two be shared to be able to understand or implement ideas from modeling one set of data into another set of data? And finally, one of my favorite questions is, how do we try and get rid of biases in data? Okay, so a lot of data sets that are out there for drawing conclusions are really data sets that represent only some parts of the world. But it's important that we actually account for the variability that exists across the world to be able to draw any conclusions, whether it is in AI or in neuroscience. I'm afraid this data is right now rather biased by the global north. So how do we set up paradigms so that we begin to actively have representation from the global south to be able to inform this data? Because learning is happening under very different contexts in the north and in the south. But it's important we use both to be able to arrive at an understanding of humanity.
Professor Nandini Chatterjee Singh there. Professor Christelle Baunez wears many hats. She's a psychopharmacology specialist. She represents EBPS, that's the European Behavioural Pharmacological Society, in the Journal of Pharmacology. And she's the chair of FENS CARE, C-A-R-E, Committee on Animals in Research. So I began by asking her about the role of CARE.
So the role of the CARE committee is, first of all, to make sure that there is a responsible use of animals in brain research all across Europe and FENS members. So we make sure that we follow and all people are aware of all the changes in the regulations for the use of animals in research to ensure the well-being and the best possible state of our animals in the research. And of course, due to the development and the growing of protests against animal use in research, we also develop advocacy activity to try to coordinate across all members of FENS to explain to the public and the politicians that we are not yet ready for alternatives and that we still need to use animals for our brain research. So that's
now your particular work has involved working with animals, hasn't it? This is
yes.
But it's also something that you're very concerned about. You feel quite strongly about. Can you just set this in context for us? What about your own background?
Yeah, sure. I've been working during my PhD thesis on animal models of Parkinson's disease, and I was particularly involved into understanding the interactions between the glutamatergic structure and the dopaminergic system that is depleted in Parkinson's disease. So I progressively arrived to the subthalamic nucleus, that is the current target for deep brain stimulation strategy, to help patients to be better. And so I work really on pursuing this further understanding on what subthalamic nucleus is contributing to in the brain if we interfere with its functioning. So that led me to addiction field. And then now we work on an hypothesis that deep brain stimulation of the subthalamic nucleus could actually be a surgical strategy to help addicts. So that's really important to use animals. We use rats and also non-human primates to validate our hypothesis before moving towards application in human subjects.
The event that you're chairing is called Advocacy for Responsible Use of Animals for as long as needed.
Exactly.
That is its general title.
Yeah.
In terms of the thinking about this, are there different views, or pretty much is the neuroscience community and related communities pretty much of one mind on this? Is it the scientific community versus people who just say, no, you shouldn't test
sadly,
animals?
no. Within our community, actually, some people think that we should no longer use animals, especially non-human primates, for example. So we will have, in this special interest event, we will have people using non-human primates in their research, because some people within our community of neuroscientists believe that artificial intelligence is going to solve everything, and we know enough that we shouldn't be using animals any longer. And so there's still the need to convince even our colleagues that we are not there yet. And it's really important that we maintain activities using animals. But of course, we have also to insist on the fact that we have made so much progress in terms of responsible use, in terms of numbers of animals, but also the care that we give them. So it's really, sadly, advocacy is not only towards the public or politicians, but it's also within our communities. We still need to convince some of our colleagues that we cannot replace yet.
It's replace where possible, reduce as much as possible, and refine, yes. And use modeling wherever possible.
Where possible, of course. I mean, that's really something. And honestly, the young scientists get more and more concerned about these issues. So we actually launched a competition on the occasion of the forum. And we received 44 applications. We gave 2 prizes. And there will be a session on this at the Open Theatre on the 26th of June in the afternoon, where we will expose the essays who have been awarded the prizes. They're a bit too long to be read at the Open Theatre session, but we will have another opportunity to discuss.
And will people be able to read these?
Yes,
essays?
They will be posted on a poster and they will be made accessible online. It's really interesting to read. So the topic was exploring the necessity of animal experiments in brain research. And we realized how the young people are really concerned and think a lot about the use of their animals in their experimentation, the guilt they feel sometimes. It was really, really interesting to read that. So it's not like, okay, we have a goal, getting good results, make publications, and no matter what. In fact, they are really, really responsible in their way they think, their research, and it was really interesting to read. So I really invite everyone who's going to listen to the podcast to go and look for the text written by the young scientists on that competition. They're really inspiring.
And I should mention that on Thursday evening, that's the 27th, the CARE Committee is hosting a networking event which gives people much more opportunity to discuss the issues raised. John Foxe is Professor of Neuroscience at the University of Rochester in upstate New York. Also, for many years, he's been Editor-in-Chief of the European Journal of Neuroscience. So I began by asking him about the special relationship between the EJN and FENS.
The thing to know is EJN really is FENS. We're the same thing. EJN is the official journal of the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies. It's where people from FENS go to publish their work, publish their great science, their great neuroscience. And maybe more than anything else to understand is it is literally the funding engine of all the things that we do in FENS. Our major revenue stream in FENS comes from the activities of the journal.
Journals these days have had a certain amount of bad publicity. Well, not the journals themselves, I suppose, but academics publishing in them where the journal has had eventually to withdraw publications. So, I mean, an obvious question is that something you've experienced? And if so, doesn't that actually call into question a little bit the authority of journals?
Yeah, well, you're really getting at a very important issue. You know, one of the things to understand in scientific publishing is some of the incentive structure that's there that can drive less than stellar technique, less than stellar approaches. I don't know how else to say it. Dishonesty, let's call it what it is. There's this kind of endless pursuit of so-called high-impact glamour publications in what are really commercially run journals. And the system itself has set up in a way that you know, youngsters and oldsters actually, you know, there are folks out there like any profession, any aspect of life, who will take shortcuts. One of the things that really distinguishes a society-owned journal like EJN, or there are many other really excellent society-owned journals, is that we really try to take that kind of an incentive structure out of it. We're not a commercial operation. We're a sort of people-run, person-first, society-oriented operation. And so when you publish with the EJN, the financial component of it goes right back into the community, and that actually really takes out some of that, you know, glamour, high sexiness of those other venues. And so what I can tell you is I'm actually in my 10th year as the editor-in-chief, and I believe that if we've had a retraction at all, it's one. We publish about 500 or 600 papers a year, and so in that 10 years I believe we had one retraction. So it's extraordinarily rare in the pages of EJN.
One of the events that you're involved with today asks the question, why should you publish with EJN? And I wanted to know what your take was on that.
Well, you're talking to a true believer here, a zealot, and I am firmly in the camp, and I've exercised it with my own work in my own lab. I'm a scientist as well in my day job, and that is we support society journals. I'm a big believer. It possibly comes out of my social democratic background from growing up in Dublin and Ireland. I'm a big believer in following where your money goes and trying to understand what it is it does. And I don't like sending money from our lab. The money from our lab comes from the American taxpayer, and I don't like sending that money to big corporate entities to pay shareholders and CEOs big salaries and billionaires. I like to know that the money that is generated by the work that I do for the American taxpayer, who pay my salary and pay for the work, that money actually goes back into the community to support science. So when somebody publishes with EJN and the journal generates revenue because of that paper, that revenue goes right back into the training programs, the scholarships, the schools, and what we're doing right here in Vienna today, 7,100 neuroscientists coming together in an extraordinary place like this to share science over 6 days in the FENS Forum. The FENS Forum is because of people choosing to work with us at EJN.
John, thank you very much indeed.
Malcolm, it's always a pleasure, man.
Professor John Foxe there. FENS Forum is a complex organism. There are a whole host of satellite events and organisations associated with it. Sara, Enrille, Lacalle and Bárbara, Sousa are organisers for one such group called ENCODS.
So ENCODS is the European Neuroscience Conference for Doctoral Students, and it's an initiative that it was created in the Neurocampus in Bordeaux in 2013 with the idea to have a safe space for early career researchers to present their work and share it with other PhD students in a very relaxed atmosphere. So also ENCODS is supported by the FENS itself, and then it's also a satellite event happening just before. The idea is that the early career researcher can attend this event and then they can benefit later to go to the FENS Forum.
Bárbara, what do you do with tell us what you both do with ENCODS.
Yeah, so we deal with everything that you can come up when we are organizing a conference. So in terms of getting funding, so we can rent a venue, talk to the keynote speakers, assessing the abstracts to select who is going to present their work, assessing the posters, so then we can later in the end of the conference attribute the prizes in our award ceremony. I mean, everything you can come up to regarding the organization of a conference. Obviously not as big as FENS, but still quite a lot of work to do for a 2-day conference.
So how many people are we talking about?
Usually it's about 100 people, and this year we had 109 attendees. All around the world, not even only from Europe, so it was a very high number of participants.
And what kind of issues arise? You know, what keeps you awake in the evenings?
Well, maybe the think of us organizing this happening in Vienna, and without any of us, like Sara and Bárbara, being in Vienna. We had 3 colleagues that were based in Vienna, but the other 5 members of the committee were spread across Europe. So I think that the idea of not being in the place where the conference is going to happen until like 2 days before the conference is the most stressful thing.
So what would make this a good ENCODS experience for you?
For me, it was seeing all the participants coming, attending the conference, staying for all the events that we had during the conference. We always had the auditorium at its fullest capacity. So despite it were like 2 full days, and we always ended up our program at 7 or 8 in the evening, the participants stayed until that time. They were very engaging with other participants, with the guests that we have for the keynote speakers, with also the trainees that we have for the workshop. So despite being a really complete and maybe a little bit tiring schedule, because it's like everything squeezed up in 2 days, the participants were really happy to attend. They were really keen on organizing a next edition of ENCODS, so I think we did a really good job.
The idea is that we can have some workshops that we as PhD students also organize in the event. We think that it could be useful for PhD students attending the conference. So in this case, we had different workshops related to presentations skill, to how to stay better in the stage when you are giving a presentation, also tips of how to prepare your slides in a very engaging way for the audience. And then we also had other 2 workshops. One was related to innovation in research, and then the other one was also for how to publish and get also for getting papers out. But then last, we also have for mental health, one very important topic also in academia, and we wanted to also track this question with all our attendees, and this was like the final cherry on top for the conference. Also for ENCODS, and here in the FENS Forum, on Thursday in the afternoon session, we will have a poster where 2 of our other members of the committee will be there, and they can explain what is ENCODS about for the people that want to have an idea, and maybe for future ENCODS edition. And also on Friday, together, me and another colleague from the committee, we will be giving a small presentation about what is ENCODS for some coordinators from master programs and PhD programs in Europe.
Big thanks to Sara, Enrille, Lacalle and Bárbara Sousa there. Well, That's it from FENS Forum 24 for today, Wednesday 26th of June. Join us again tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great evening. The FENS Forum podcast was presented by me, Malcolm Love. Music is by Dennis Kitchuk, and this was a FENS production by Solid Gold Hat.